Kash Patel had seen many secrets while working for the Ministry of Defense, terrorist organizations, covert operations, international conspiracies. But it never occurred to him to explore the dark webs of the music industry, until, while investigating the connections of a foreign government, he stumbled upon documents showing how America's most prestigious music awards were being manipulated. Patel couldn't fight alone. He needed a powerful ally, and he couldn't think of a better candidate than Taylor Swift. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. The Pentagon's corridors were eerily quiet at 2:18 a.m. Kash Patel preferred working these late hours. Fewer interruptions, fewer curious glances at his monitor. As Special Advisor to the Secretary of Defense on Foreign Influence Operations, his current assignment involved tracing financial connections between a hostile foreign government and various American institutions. Patel sipped his cold coffee, eyes burning from hours of scanning financial records. He was about to call it a night when a transaction caught his attention. $12.8 million from a shell company in Luxembourg to an entity called Platinum Circle Entertainment. Something about the name triggered his memory. He cross-referenced it against his database and found a match. Platinum Circle Entertainment was a subsidiary of Global Music Alliance, the parent organization behind America's most prestigious music awards. "That's odd," he muttered, digging deeper. What began as a routine investigation soon revealed an elaborate network. The foreign entity wasn't just making isolated investments. It was part of a sophisticated operation funneling millions into America's entertainment industry, with a particular focus on music award organizations. Patel discovered encrypted communications between Platinum Circle executives and representatives from 3 major record labels. The language was carefully coded, but the meaning became clear as he analyzed multiple exchanges. Award winners weren't being selected based on artistic merit or commercial success, but according to a predetermined rotation system among the labels, a system designed to maximize profits, manipulate music streams, and shape cultural influence. By dawn, Patel had compiled enough evidence to justify a preliminary investigation, but something told him to pause before filing an official report. The entities involved were powerful, with connections reaching into government, media, and finance. 1. Wrong move and the evidence might disappear. Or worse, be buried forever. He needed leverage, public pressure that couldn't be silenced. He needed someone with both personal interest in the corruption and enough public influence to make people listen. As he drove home, exhausted but mind-racing, Patel heard a Taylor Swift song on the radio, her latest single from an album that had broken streaming records but, surprisingly, been largely overlooked at recent award shows. "Perfect," he whispered. Getting to Swift wouldn't be easy. Her security was legendary, her inner circle carefully vetted. Direct contact would likely be intercepted by managers, publicists, or lawyers who might have their own relationships with the very system Patel wanted to expose. He needed a more subtle approach. Using skills honed during his intelligence career, Patel crafted a message that would bypass the usual filters, specific enough to intrigue Swift, vague enough to avoid raising alarms, and containing a verification method only someone with government clearance could provide. 3 days later, Taylor Swift was reviewing potential set designs for her upcoming tour when her personal assistant handed her an envelope that had been hand-delivered to her Nashville office. "This came through the fan mail screening," her assistant explained. "Security flagged it because it passed all the usual tests but seems unusual." Swift opened the envelope. Inside was a simple white card with a QR code and a handwritten message. "The reason you didn't win isn't what you think. Scan in private." Typically, Swift would ignore such cryptic messages. She received plenty of strange communications from both fans and detractors, but something about this one felt different. The handwriting was precise, professional. The paper quality was government grade, and the timing was curious, just weeks after another puzzling award snub. That evening, alone in her home studio, Swift scanned the QR code. It led to an encrypted messaging platform requiring a password. The password hint simply read, "Your first guitar brand plus the street number of your childhood home." Swift hesitated. This was specific information. Available publicly, yes, but the combination suggested someone who had done thorough research. Curiosity overcoming caution, she entered the password. A message appeared. Ms. Swift, my name is Kash Patel. Until recently, I worked for the Department of Defense investigating foreign influence operations. During an official investigation, I discovered something you should know about the music award industry. If you're interested, reply with a time and I'll explain further. To verify my identity, call the Pentagon switchboard and ask for my former office. Swift's first instinct was skepticism, but her experiences in the music industry had taught her that sometimes the most unlikely stories held truth. She called. The Pentagon number asked for Patel's former department and confirmed he had indeed worked there until 3 weeks ago. Intrigued but cautious, she replied to the message. Tomorrow, 3 p.m. The place will come to you separately. The following day, Kash Patel sat at a corner table in a private room at the Bluegrass Cafe, a discreet establishment in Nashville frequented by music industry professionals seeking confidential conversations. He had arrived an hour early, surveyed all entrances and exits, and positioned himself with a clear view of the door. At precisely 3 p.m., Taylor Swift entered, accompanied by a single security guard who remained outside after scanning the room. She wore a simple black turtleneck and jeans, hair tucked under a cap, her version of incognito. Mr. Patel? She nodded, taking the seat opposite him. Ms. Swift, he responded. Thank you for coming. I'm here because I'm curious, she said, directly, but also skeptical. Why would a Defense Department official have information about music awards? Patel appreciated her forthrightness. I wasn't looking for it. I was investigating foreign financial influence in American institutions. The music industry wasn't my target, but that's where the evidence led. He opened his laptop, turning it so Swift could see the screen. This is a financial flowchart showing transactions between a foreign entity and several American companies, including the parent organization of your industry's most prestigious awards. Swift studied the diagram, her expression revealing nothing. By itself, foreign investment isn't unusual or illegal, Patel continued, but these particular transactions coincide with something else. He pulled up another document, a spreadsheet with award categories, dates, and record labels. This is what caught my attention. Over the past 9 years, major category winners follow a pattern, a rotation among 3 major labels. It's subtle enough to include occasional outliers, but statistically undeniable. Swift's eyes narrowed as she examined the data. This shows that winners are predetermined. Patel finished. Not based on sales, not based on artistic merit, but according to which label's turn it is. That would explain. Swift trailed off, mind racing through her own experiences. Your album, Evermore, winning nothing despite critical acclaim. Your Midnights being overlooked in major categories despite breaking sales records. Yes, it would explain exactly that. Swift leaned back, processing the information. These are serious allegations, Mr. Patel. What are you proposing to do with this? That depends partly on you, he replied. I could file an official report, but without additional pressure, it would likely disappear into bureaucratic channels. These organizations have powerful allies, and that's where I come in. Swift concluded. You have something no government official has. Cultural influence. Millions of people who trust you. And a personal stake that makes your voice authentic. Swift was silent for a long moment, weighing implications that extended far beyond her personal career. Finally, she looked up, determination hardening her features. I've spent my career fighting for artists' rights, against streaming services, record labels, managers who exploited young talent. If what you're showing me is true, it's another form of the same corruption. It is true, Patel assured her, and there's more. For the next hour, he detailed his findings, how award nominations were traded like commodities, how certain artists were blacklisted for refusing to participate in the system, how the pattern extended beyond music into film and television. Awards. The question, Patel concluded, is whether you're willing to help expose it, knowing the risks. What risks exactly? Swift asked, though she already knew. Retaliation, blacklisting, media smears. The system protects itself. Swift almost laughed. Mr. Patel, I've been dealing with those things since I was 17. The question isn't whether I can handle retaliation, it's whether we can prove all this beyond reasonable doubt. Patel smiled for the first time. I thought you might say that. Here's what I propose. I have access to financial records and communication logs. What I don't have is insider industry knowledge or current connections. I have both, Swift acknowledged, plus recordings of conversations that suddenly make much more sense in this context. We would need to work quickly and discreetly, Patel warned. Once they realize what we're doing, they'll try to stop us, Swift finished. I'm familiar with powerful men trying to silence me, Mr. Patel. It hasn't worked out well for them. As they outlined their plan, neither fully grasped the magnitude of what they were undertaking. Not just exposing corruption in award shows, but unraveling a system designed to control cultural narratives, manipulate public opinion, and funnel billions of dollars to a select few. What began as a chance discovery during a routine Pentagon investigation was about to evolve into one of the most significant cultural exposés of the decade. The unlikely alliance between a former defense official and the world's biggest pop star would shake the entertainment industry to its core. And somewhere in a luxurious Los Angeles office, the architects of this corrupt system were about to have their last comfortable night of sleep for a very long time. The following weeks saw Taylor Swift and Kash Patel operating like seasoned intelligence partners. They established secure communication channels, coded language for sensitive topics, and a careful division of responsibilities that leveraged their unique positions. Swift reached out to trusted artists who had experienced similar award show inconsistencies, gathering testimonies without revealing the full scope of the investigation. Patel analyzed financial records, mapping connections between award organizations, record labels, and foreign investors. They met infrequently, always in different locations, always under plausible pretexts. When Swift visited Washington, D.C., for a benefit concert, she and Patel had their longest strategy session yet in a private room at the Library of Congress, a location chosen for both its security and the poetic justice of plotting to expose corruption surrounded by America's historical documents. I've identified 3 key executives who appear repeatedly in the communications, Patel explained, spreading documents across the table. Harold Wentworth at Global Music Alliance, Sophia Chen at Platinum Circle, and this man, James Morrison, at Standard Records. Swift studied the photograph of Morrison, a silver-haired industry veteran known for his philanthropic work and mentorship of young artists. Morrison has been positioned as the industry's moral conscience for decades, she noted. That makes him the perfect cover. Exactly, Patel agreed. And according to these communications, he's the one who established the rotation system for major awards back in 2014, right after streaming began disrupting traditional revenue models. Swift opened her laptop, pulling up a spreadsheet. I've analyzed major category winners since then. The pattern is unmistakable once you know to look for it. Label A wins Album of the Year, then Label B gets Record of the Year, Label C takes Song of the Year. Next cycle, they rotate. The occasional independent winner? Patel asked. Always the same story. They sign with one of the major labels shortly after winning, Swift confirmed. It's presented as indie artist gets deserved recognition, but it's actually indie artist gets rewarded for joining the system. Their investigation expanded beyond financial records and award patterns to include testimony from insiders, sound engineers, junior producers, even janitorial staff who had overheard damning conversations. Each piece of evidence strengthened their case, but also increased the danger. 3 days after their Washington meeting, Swift received a warning. During a routine album planning session, her longtime producer mentioned casually, "Industry people are talking. They say you've been asking questions about award voting processes." Swift maintained her composure. "Just trying to understand the system better. Be careful with those questions," he advised, his expression concerned. "Some doors are better left unopened." That same day, Patel noticed unusual activity on his encrypted devices, subtle signs of attempted intrusion by sophisticated actors. Someone was getting nervous. When they next met, in a private jet circling over the Midwest to avoid physical surveillance, the mood had shifted from investigative determination to strategic urgency. "They're aware something's happening, Patel." Confirmed. We need to accelerate the timeline. Swift nodded. I've been invited to perform at the American Music Awards next month. If we're going to do this, that's our moment. A live broadcast with millions watching, Patel considered. No way to cut the feed without confirming everything we're alleging. Exactly. But we need irrefutable evidence. Something even their crisis management teams can't spin. Patel pulled out a small device. This might help. It's a specialized extraction tool developed for intelligence operations. If we can get physical access to Morrison's private server, we can bypass security and download everything. Getting that access is the problem. Swift frowned. His office is in the standard records building. Security is tight. Unless you have a reason to be there, Patel suggested. A meeting, perhaps? A potential collaboration? Swift's eyes lit up. Better, a peace offering. 2 days later, headlines announced that Taylor Swift had reached out to James Morrison about resolving their long-rumored feud. A narrative constructed from carefully planted stories and strategic social media activity. Morrison, seeing an opportunity for positive publicity, readily agreed to a private meeting at his office. The morning of the meeting, Swift arrived at Standard Records with a small entourage, her manager, a stylist, and a new tech assistant, who was actually Kash Patel, disguised with subtle but effective alterations to his appearance. As Swift charmed Morrison in his expansive corner office, Patel excused himself to set up Ms. Swift's presentation. Instead, he made his way to Morrison's private server room, used specialized equipment to bypass security, and began extracting data. Mr. Morrison, Swift was saying, I think it's time we moved past old disagreements. The industry is facing new challenges, and artists should be united. Morrison nodded magnanimously. I've always admired your business acumen, Taylor. Perhaps we've been on opposite sides too long. That's why I'm proposing a joint initiative, something to support emerging artists navigating the new streaming landscape. As she outlined a completely fabricated proposal, Swift was acutely aware of the time passing. Patel needed at least 12 minutes for the extraction to complete. Fascinating approach, Morrison commented. Very different from your usual independence. We all evolve, Swift smiled. Speaking of which, I'd love your thoughts on how award recognition impacts streaming numbers. The patterns seem unpredictable. A flicker of something, caution, concern, crossed Morrison's face. Awards are subjective by nature. That's why the voting process is so complex. Of course, Swift nodded. Though I've noticed certain patterns in major category winners over the years. Morrison's expression hardened slightly. Patterns? Rotation patterns, Swift said, watching his reaction carefully, almost as if it's predetermined which labels artists will win each year. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Morrison's warm demeanor cooled. That's quite an accusation, Ms. Swift. Not an accusation, she replied smoothly. Just an observation. Morrison studied her for a long moment. You know, in this industry, careful observation is a valuable skill. So is knowing when to keep observations to yourself. The implied threat hung in the air as Patel returned, giving Swift a nearly imperceptible nod. The extraction was complete. Thank you for your time, Mr. Morrison, Swift said, rising. I think we understand each other better now. As they left the building, Patel whispered, We got everything. Server logs, emails, financial transfers, even recorded board meetings. It's all there. And now he knows we know, Swift replied quietly. Which means we have very little time. She was right. That evening, Swift's manager received calls from 3 major venues threatening to cancel upcoming tour dates. A tabloid received anonymous tips about Swift's erratic behavior and concerning mental health issues. Social media suddenly flooded with identical negative comments about her recent performances. The system was fighting back. Patel, meanwhile, discovered that someone had attempted to access his secure storage and financial accounts. Former colleagues warned him that questions were being asked about his departure from government service. They're trying to discredit us before we can speak, Patel told Swift during an emergency secure call. Standard character assassination techniques. Then we don't wait for the American Music Awards, Swift decided. We move now. The next 48 hours were a blur of activity. Swift contacted her most trusted team members, attorneys, security specialists, digital experts, revealing only what each needed to know. Patel organized the evidence into an irrefutable package, creating multiple backups stored in various secure locations. Together, they crafted a strategy that would make the revelation impossible to suppress. Simultaneous release across multiple platforms, key evidence provided in advance to selected journalists, and a live-streamed statement that would be mirrored on servers worldwide. The night before their planned revelation, Swift received an unexpected visitor at her Nashville home. Her security team, after thorough screening, allowed Olivia Chen to enter, a talented independent artist whose career had mysteriously stalled despite critical acclaim. "I know what you're doing," Chen said without preamble, "and I want to help." "I'm not sure what you mean," Swift replied cautiously. "The award system, Morrison, the rotation scheme." Chen's eyes were intense. "I have proof too." She explained that after her debut album received unexpected nominations, she was approached about signing with Standard Records. When she declined, preferring to remain independent, her next album was completely ignored despite stronger reviews and sales. "But I recorded the conversation where they explained the system to me," Chen revealed, pulling out a phone. "They thought I'd be grateful to be included, so they were explicit about how it works." The recording was damning. A Standard Records executive clearly outlining how award nominations were traded between labels, how winners were predetermined, and how artists who didn't cooperate were blacklisted. "This is exactly what we needed," Swift realized. "A direct admission from someone inside the system." Chen nodded. "There are others too. Artists who were promised recognition if they played along, who were silenced when they questioned the process. I've been in contact with several. They're ready to speak if given protection." This new development transformed their strategy. Instead of a revelation from just Swift and Patel, they could present a united front of artists with first-hand experiences of the corruption. Too many voices to dismiss, too diverse to discredit. Through the night, they worked to integrate this new element into their plan. By dawn, they had created a coalition of 23 artists from across genres, each with their own piece of evidence, each ready to step forward. As morning broke, Swift sent a simple message to her 230 million social media followers: the truth about music awards. Live statement. Today, 2 p.m. Eastern. No elaboration, no explanation, just an announcement that instantly sparked speculation across the internet. Industry executives, sensing something momentous, began making panicked calls. James Morrison convened an emergency meeting at Standard Records. The major awards organizations prepared crisis statements without knowing exactly what crisis was about to hit. At precisely 2 p.m., Taylor Swift appeared on a live stream, seated at a simple desk. Beside her was Kash Patel, his government background, lending credibility to what would follow. Around them, visible on separate screens, were the 23 artists who had joined their coalition. "Good afternoon," Swift began, her voice steady. "What I'm about to share will shake the foundation of the music industry. For years, many of us have suspected that music awards aren't what they claim to be. Today, we have proof." For the next 30 minutes, Swift and Patel methodically presented their evidence: financial records showing payments for award results, communications detailing the rotation system, statistical analysis demonstrating the impossibility of the patterns occurring naturally, and testimonies from artists who had been both beneficiaries and victims of the system. Chen played her recording. Other artists shared similar experiences. Patel explained how the corruption extended beyond artistic integrity to include foreign influence and market manipulation. "This isn't about sour grapes or personal disappointment," Swift emphasized. "This is about a systematic deception that has harmed artists, misled fans, and corrupted the celebration of musical achievement for financial gain." As she spoke, their team was releasing comprehensive evidence packages to journalists, prosecutors, and regulatory agencies worldwide. The full server extraction from Morrison's office was being uploaded to secure sites where it could be independently verified. By the time Swift concluded the live stream, Social media had exploded. Music award scandal, Swift justice, and rotation scheme dominated trending topics globally. News networks interrupted regular programming for breaking coverage, and in executive offices across the music industry, the architects of the corrupt system watched in horror as their carefully constructed facade crumbled in real time. The industry was collapsing overnight, just as they had planned. But the most dramatic developments were still to come. The immediate aftermath of Swift and Patel's revelation was unlike anything the entertainment industry had ever experienced. Within hours, the stock prices of major record labels plummeted. Global Music Alliance, the parent company of several award organizations, halted trading after losing 41% of its value in a single afternoon. James Morrison issued a vehement denial, calling the allegations fabricated attacks from disgruntled artists. His statement, clearly prepared in advance, backfired spectacularly when journalists matched it almost word for word with crisis management templates found in the leaked server files. By evening, the Department of Justice announced a preliminary investigation into potential violations of antitrust laws, securities fraud, and foreign influence operations within the entertainment industry. The Securities and Exchange Commission followed with its own inquiry into market manipulation. International reactions compounded the crisis. Music industry watchdogs in Europe called for reviews of their own award systems. Asian streaming platforms announced they would no longer factor Western music awards into their promotion algorithms. Swift, anticipating the industry's counterattack, had prepared thoroughly. When Standard Records filed an emergency injunction claiming the server data was obtained illegally, her legal team revealed they had also secured whistleblower testimony from the company's own IT director who had legally provided server access, out of moral concerns. "We didn't just build a case," Patel explained during a CNN interview the following day. "We built a fortress of evidence with multiple independent verification paths. There's no single point of failure they can attack." The coalition of artists Swift had assembled proved crucial as the industry attempted to isolate and discredit individual voices. When executives tried to dismiss Chen as unsuccessful and bitter, Grammy-winning artists in the coalition immediately defended her, sharing their own similar experiences. Social media became both battleground and courtroom, with millions of fans examining the evidence for themselves. Music journalists who had long suspected award corruption began publishing stories they'd previously feared to release, adding new layers to the scandal. 3 days after the initial revelation, the first major resignation came. Harold Wentworth stepped down as CEO of Global Music Alliance, citing health concerns, but fooling no one. By the end of the week, executives across all 3 major labels were either resigning or being placed on administrative leave. For Swift personally, the backlash was intense but ineffective. Tabloids published hit pieces questioning her motives. Industry insiders suggested she was destabilizing music's ecosystem out of spite. Several radio stations temporarily pulled her music from rotation. Yet these attacks seemed petty and vindictive compared to the mountain of evidence she and Patel had presented. Each attack only strengthened public support for their cause. When one prominent music blog published a particularly vicious critique, fans responded by pushing Swift's latest album back to #1 on all streaming platforms. Patel faced different challenges. Former colleagues in government warned him about potential retaliation from foreign entities implicated in the scheme. Security firms detected sophisticated attempts to breach his communications. The intelligence community, while publicly silent, privately confirmed his findings were consistent with known foreign influence operations. 10 days into the scandal, during a rare moment of calm, Swift and Patel met at a secluded farmhouse outside Nashville to assess their progress and plan next steps. The industry response is following the classic stages of crisis, Patel observed, laying out his analysis. Denial, anger, attempted discrediting of sources. They're approaching the bargaining stage now, Swift nodded. "I've received 3 peace offering calls from label executives suggesting mutual solutions that would preserve the best aspects of the current system. Which means they want to make cosmetic changes while maintaining control." Swift's expression hardened. "That's not happening." Patel studied the latest intelligence reports from his contacts. The foreign actors are withdrawing, cutting financial ties to minimize exposure. That's actually a positive sign. They don't withdraw unless they believe the operation is truly compromised. What about the artists still caught in the system? Swift asked. Especially those who didn't know they were being manipulated? This had become her primary concern. While some established artists had built enough independent power to weather the industry upheaval, many younger performers faced uncertain futures as labels froze projects and award shows postponed ceremonies. We need to create something new, Swift realized. Not just tear down the corrupt system, but build a legitimate alternative. This insight evolved into the next phase of their mission, the Artist Integrity Initiative. Swift committed $50 million of her own money to establish an independent, transparent organization that would celebrate musical achievement based on clear, objective criteria combined with legitimate peer review. The announcement of this initiative, coming 2 weeks after the initial expose, shifted the narrative from scandal to solution. Artists who had been hesitant to speak out now openly supported the new approach. Streaming platforms, eager to distance themselves from the tainted award system, offered partnerships, when Swift publicly invited industry leaders to join the planning committee for the new awards, with the condition that all processes would be transparent and independently audited. It created an impossible choice. Refusing would seem like an admission of preference for corruption. Accepting would mean surrendering control they had maintained for decades. One by one, faced with overwhelming public pressure and artist solidarity, they capitulated. Even James Morrison, after a week of increasingly desperate denials, resigned from Standard Records and issued a carefully worded statement acknowledging systemic problems in the awards process. The congressional hearings that followed provided some of the most remarkable testimony in entertainment industry history. Label executives, award show producers, and voting committee members revealed the intricate mechanisms of corruption, how streaming numbers were manipulated, how radio play was purchased, how critical reviews were influenced, and how it all tied to the predetermined award outcomes. Perhaps most damning was the revelation that the system had deliberately suppressed artists whose messages challenged political or social narratives favored by certain foreign interests. Musical merit had been secondary to cultural influence for years. 3 months after Swift and Patel's initial revelation, the landscape of the music industry had transformed dramatically. The major award shows announced complete restructuring, with independent oversight. Record labels implemented transparency policies for their promotion and development processes. Streaming platforms revised their algorithms to reduce manipulability. For Olivia Chen and other independent artists who had been sidelined by the corrupt system, opportunities blossomed. Her latest album, released amid the industry upheaval, received recognition based purely on its artistic merit, reaching audiences who would have never discovered it under the old system. The first ceremony of the Artist Integrity Awards, held 6 months after the scandal broke, symbolized the industry's transformation. Hosted jointly by Swift and Chen, with Patel serving on the oversight committee, it celebrated musical achievement across all labels, genres, and levels of commercial success. The voting process was publicly documented, the judging criteria clearly defined, and the entire event live-streamed with unprecedented transparency. Viewership exceeded that of any previous music award show, demonstrating that audiences valued authenticity over manufactured spectacle. After the ceremony, Swift, Patel, and Chen met briefly backstage, a moment of quiet reflection amid the celebration. "We actually did it," Chen marveled. "A year ago, I was ready to quit music entirely. Now you're being recognized for your actual talent," Swift finished, "as it should have been all along." Patel, typically reserved, allowed himself a small smile. "This goes beyond music. What you've done here creates a template for exposing corruption in other cultural institutions. Film awards, literary prizes, art exhibitions. They're all watching, all reassessing their own vulnerabilities." Swift nodded, understanding the broader implications. Systems that operate in shadows can't survive exposure to light. That's true everywhere, not just in entertainment. As they parted ways, each returning to their respective worlds, Swift to her music, Patel to new security consulting work, Chen to her burgeoning career, they carried the knowledge that their unlikely alliance had permanently altered not just an industry, but cultural recognition itself. The following year brought unexpected validation from an unlikely source. A comprehensive Senate investigation into foreign influence operations confirmed everything Swift and Patel had exposed, adding new details about how the corrupt award system had been exploited by foreign entities seeking cultural leverage in the United States. The report specifically credited the unprecedented courage of private citizens who risked their careers and personal safety to expose corruption that government oversight had failed to detect. For Taylor Swift, the experience reinforced a truth she had discovered repeatedly throughout her career. Institutional power, no matter how entrenched, ultimately cannot withstand the combined force of truth, courage, and public awakening. When Lauder interviewed for a documentary about the scandal, Swift reflected, "Artists are often told to stay in their lane, to make music and avoid controversy. But music has always been about truth-telling. Sometimes that means writing a song about heartbreak. Sometimes it means exposing corruption that affects every artist and listener. Both are acts of creative integrity." Kash Patel, in his own interview, offered a different perspective. National security isn't just about borders and military threats. It's about protecting American institutions from manipulation and interference. What happened in the music industry was a national security issue disguised as entertainment business. 5 years after their initial expose, the impact of Swift and Patel's collaboration continued to reverberate. The transparency standards they established became industry norms. The Artist Integrity Awards grew into the most respected recognition in music. Most importantly, a new generation of artists flourished in an ecosystem where talent and innovation mattered more than corporate connections. When asked about her legacy, Swift typically redirected attention to the ongoing work of maintaining integrity in the industry. But during one rare candid moment, she acknowledged the deeper significance of what they had accomplished. Before this happened, there was a pervasive cynicism. This assumption that everything is corrupt, that systems can't change, that powerful interests always win, she said. What I hope people remember isn't just that we exposed corruption, but that we proved it could be defeated. That's a truth that extends far beyond music. This story about Taylor Swift and Kash Patel's takedown of the corrupt music award system highlights how power often operates in modern America through control of cultural institutions that shape public perception. In today's media landscape, where awards and recognition can dramatically influence what art reaches audiences, the manipulation of these systems represents a subtle but powerful form of cultural control. The unlikely alliance between a pop superstar and a national security expert illustrates how meaningful change often requires crossing conventional boundaries, combining different types of expertise and influence to challenge entrenched systems. It also demonstrates how institutions that seem permanent can crumble quickly when their legitimacy is fundamentally questioned. For Americans in 2025, this story carries important lessons about the power of transparency in the digital age. When Swift and Patel chose to release evidence directly to the public rather than rely solely on traditional accountability mechanisms, they harnessed the collective intelligence of millions to verify and amplify their findings. A powerful strategy in an era of distributed information and institutional distrust. The creation of a more transparent alternative, rather than simply tearing down the corrupt system, offers a template for constructive reform that maintains what is valuable while eliminating what is corrupt. A balance especially relevant in a time of polarized perspectives on institutional change. Thank you for watching this story about courage, integrity, and the power of unlikely alliances. Don't forget to subscribe and comment below with your thoughts. We'll see you in the next video.